Join us for 3 days in Orlando, Florida in March 2026 for an event designed to equip IT professionals like you with the tools, knowledge, and strategies to navigate the ever-changing cybersecurity landscape. Secure your spot and register to join us for 3 days of immersive learning, collaboration, and skill building with hands-on hacking labs and much more. Network with peers from around the globe. Share experiences and learn from real-world case studies, all aimed at enhancing your capabilities as an IT professional. Elevate your experience at the after party. Registration is now open. Register now for Zero Trust World 2026 and take the first step towards a more secure tomorrow.
Welcome back to our webinar series. It's been a few weeks since.
Well, welcome back to you. You organized the last one and didn't show up for it.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, okay.
I hear it was nowhere near as good. I had some people come over to me.
Lots of people told me it was tremendous.
Yeah.
The sheer variety of accents that were on display, everybody was really pleased with.
Yeah, Kieran's got like 6 accents himself.
6 in one person.
Yeah.
It's tremendous.
So,
tremendous.
You're not really sure where he's from. Okay, so today we're actually going to talk about my favorite topic, which is blocking stuff. Application control, application allowlisting, application whitelisting, whatever you want to call it, but essentially allowing what you need, blocking everything else.
It's such a wonderful concept.
It's not just a wonderful concept, it's wonderful.
Well, yes.
So, actually, true story. One of the, we made a deal with our kids' school. We're going to get our kids in school, couldn't afford to pay for their private schooling, wanted to make them a bit smarter than we are, so figured it was a good bet. Couldn't afford to pay for 3 kids in private school at the time, pre-ThreatLocker days, so we agreed to look after all their IT in exchange for our kids getting scholarships.
File that one under seemed like a good idea at the time, I'd imagine.
Yeah, until we were doing 20 hours a week on looking after their IT, and it was just constant things breaking, people downloading stuff they shouldn't, malware, software, and it was a nightmare. They were the first user of ThreatLocker, technically, and it went down from 20 hours a week to, a couple of hours a month now.
Mm-hmm. I can confirm.
So it's... the idea of blocking things by default, people think often is more work. It's actually so much less work, but it does come with challenges, and we want to walk through them and say, how do we make whitelisting, allowlisting work in your environment? But to begin with, let's talk about what it actually is, because people have different opinions. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, they're like, well, how do I make it so my database can change? So your database doesn't open. I want to define what we're actually blocking. So the idea of allowlisting or application control is you allow the applications you want and everything else gets blocked. And that applications mean files, so DLLs, script files, batch files, command prompt files, jar files, all of those types of files. But it also means, what it doesn't mean is Word documents and database files.
Yes.
They can be read, files can't be executed. So when you implement an allowlisting solution, it intercepts the execution of a file, not the reading of a file. Because there is a difference. When you open even if you take an executable and copy it from one folder to another, that is reading and writing of the file. Double clicking on it, opening it in command prompt, executing.
That's executing.
Executing really bad, reading and writing. Technically, you could, I wouldn't recommend it, but you can put 20 different pieces of malware in your downloads folder and it's not going to harm your computer.
Until you run them.
Until you run them by mistake. So now, in order to do this, the idea of allowlisting is you say, I'm going to explicitly list every application that I want to run, every file. So I'm going to put a list in of the DLLs and the scripts and the executables on my machine. Now, the reality is there's 20,000 of those. And there's different strategies to this, and has been different strategies in the past of how you want to permit things. At the most basic level, you can permit things like I want to permit the Windows folder, I want to permit the program files folder, I want to permit a file name. So I want to say chrome.exe can run. Not the best way, but it's better than no way.
Yeah, I think not the best is being kind.
Well, so if you gave me the choice of having no allowlisting or just completely
allowing certain folders,
allow the whole Windows folder and program files folder, block everything else, I'm choosing option B.
Okay, fair.
So it's not good, and I've done that in the past prior to ThreatLocker to get a more secured environment where users can't just download and run whatever they want. The better way, the most effective way, is to allow something by its hash.
Yes.
So we say, I'm going to take a SHA of the file and I'm going to say this SHA of file is allowed to run in my environment, and you add that to the allow list, and if it tries to execute, it runs. Now, what's nice about this is if the file changes, so an attacker says, I'm going to replace calculator with ransomware, it's not going to be able to run because it changes. If someone gets into your login script and changes it, it's not going to be able to run because it's changed.
The Chrome.exe one is actually interesting because I'm pretty sure our app team got through a notification of a Chrome block recently, Chrome.exe, and it was literally malware that somebody had renamed to be Chrome.exe.
Technically, it was
to try and run it.
rclone.exe. Rclone renamed to Chrome.
Ah, interesting.
Not malware, but data
Interesting.
exfiltration, and the purpose was to bypass. So somebody tried to bypass. Someone had got access to the machine, tried to bypass the whitelist, downloaded rclone, and renamed it as Chrome in order to make it run.
So basically, they assumed that the whitelisting was based on path rather than based on hash, which, as we've said, is better.
Yes, but essentially we're putting things on a list. Now, the other option is having combinations thereof. So you could actually say, or even certificates, you might say anything signed by Microsoft is allowed to run. Big no for Microsoft.
Also doesn't also include things like PowerShell, which isn't signed.
Well, isn't signed, but the problem is Microsoft write a lot of software. A lot of that software can be used against you. So you can allow list by certificate. You can also do combinations thereof. So you can say, I want to allow list anything in the program files folder or the Windows folder that's signed by Microsoft, or anything in the program files Dropbox folder that's signed by Dropbox. And there's a whole bunch of different options here. But the reality is, what's put people off this is it's always been too difficult.
Perceived to be hard work.
And it was in many cases, because you either did it half-baked, where you allowed entire folders, or you did it not at all. Now, sometimes we'll have a customer and they'll say, well, I've got a developer and they're just compiling hundreds of files in this folder and they're changing those files and they're not signed and we need to be able to run them. This is where I feel like the folder use case makes sense, because if you can make a relatively small pinhole, make it difficult.
Yeah, or a folder created by a specific process is normally a way to do it with developers.
Yeah.
So if it's created by MS Build and it's in this folder, then.
But the bottom line is that there's a lot of different ways. Now, what we want to do is talk to you about how you can do it in ThreatLocker, because people often think, how many FTEs do I need to deploy this? And you don't, is the answer. This is part of one person's job. And yeah, if you've got 200,000 endpoints, then it probably becomes a project management. And if you've got 200,000 endpoints, the majority of your work is going to be actually doing change control processes internal, than more so than actually setting up a whitelist of files.
Just back to the Chrome.exe one. So somebody is asking a question, which is, can renamed malware files Chrome.exe also have certificates forged such that they show it is signed by Google?
Okay, so you can technically forge a certificate, but the file changes. So when the way a certificate works is attached to the file, and it takes a SHA of the data in the file, it signs it, and then it says this is signed by Google. So it might, if you look in Windows, it's going to say, but as long as you've got protection as a feature in ThreatLocker that's turned on, I think by default, that says check the certificate is actually not a mismatch. We call it digest mismatch. So in other words, the certificate matches the file, rather than just the certificate being in the file. So it can be, but if you're doing it right, you should be checking the contents of the file match the SHA on the certificate. Yeah,
so short answer is they can be ripped and applied to other files, but the fact that we do 99.9% of our allow listing by hash means even if they do, it doesn't matter. Glenn made a very valid point, which is half the Windows folder needs to be blocked as well.
Well, that's not untrue.
And it's another thing that people don't often consider when they think about allow listing, is that as well as allow what you need and block everything else, we can literally block specific things within Windows if we want. So we want to block PowerShell for normal users, or we want to block command prompt.
MSHTA.
Very
most
good
popular
example. Very good example.
Used recently.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it obviously a big scary process. I'm going to walk you through how I would deploy whitelisting or allow listing in ThreatLocker. I'm going to show you the options you have. I'm going to try and go through as many advanced scenarios as possible, where you can actually say, well, how would I deal with this? And feel free to post questions.
Well, Sean has asked a very important question, which is Sean the sheep mug ?
Sean the sheep mug.
It's not a Sean the sheep mug, but it is a sheep mug.
It says, you are the boss. My daughter just gave me this cup. It's my wife's cup, actually, but
you are the boss.
My daughter just very kindly dropped some tea into me before we began.
So yeah, sheep mug, no. Yes, Sean the sheep mug, no.
Okay, so let's get beginning. I'm going to show you my screen here, and I'm going to show you what a process of allow listing should look like beginning to end. And I think the most important thing you should know is when you allow list, you block not just bad software, good software, but also bad software, malware. And ransomware, malware, rclone, TeamViewer are all software. So when you allow list, you're taking away all of these risks from your environment. So the first thing you want to do if you want to say, tomorrow I'm going to go from allowing everything to blocking everything environment, is we want to find out what's running in your environment. Now, in a perfect world, you can actually write this down on a list of paper and you're going to get it perfectly right 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen once, and that was in ThreatLocker when we started and we had 2 computers. So outside of that, no idea. So the way you're typically going to approach this, if you're coming from a non-allow listing environment to an allow listing environment, is let's go and figure out what's on our machine. So if you're using ThreatLocker, you're going to deploy an agent. Obviously, a lot of people on the call already know ThreatLocker. You can install a computer. When you install a computer, you can push it out through an RMM script, Active Directory, SCCM, Intune. There's a whole bunch of pre-canned options right here. And you pick a group and you put the computer in a group. And when you install, it starts off in what we call learning mode. And when something's in learning mode, nothing's getting blocked. It's just going to say something's learning. We're going to monitor. We're going to figure out what's happening in your environment. Now, what's nice about this is the risk becomes relatively low for you. Note point, I know we have a lot of clients on here as well. We have a system in place now that our engineers cannot create any learning mode past an hour or something on behalf of a customer. And the reason we did this is because customers often ask us to, can you extend my learning out for another week? We do it. And there was a bad incident. And despite us having Zoom recordings, it wasn't a good look when our name was on the learning. So we can't extend your learning mode for you, but you can go in here when you first deploy
and do it yourself.
It's going to automatically put it in learning mode for 3 weeks. Now, I'm going to show you how to change that. You can click on the group name here. You can go into groups. You can click on it. If you want to change the default learning mode period, you can do it in here. You can do it anything from 0 to 45 days or indefinite. I would highly recommend, again, choosing indefinite. If you decide I've done it 21 days and I want to go and extend it for another 21 days, you can go into here, you can select all, and you can enable learning again and extend it.
And you can always see from that page when learning is going to be over anyway. It'll show you when learning is due to end.
And it'll go red if it thinks you should turn it off. So these machines go into learning mode as soon as you deploy. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to start to log everything in it here in one central place. And I'm just going to focus on executes and installs. So if I go to execute here, we can now show you everything that's happening, every DLL that's running on your machine, every executable that's running on your machine. So I can see here Google Chrome's running. I can see it's digitally signed by Google. I can see the hash, the SHA, the process that called it, and the file name, which is actually Chrome Updater. .exe. So you can see everything that's happening on your machine. And what you'll notice, and I don't have anything here, but when you first deploy, a lot of things here are going to say policy action deny, and it's going to be in green. And you've got a checkbox, I think, next to it. So it's going to say deny, and it's in green. Don't worry about that. What that means is the policy would have denied this software, but it wasn't denied because it was in learning mode. And when you open it, you'll be able to see that. Now, you can go through this list if you want, and you can start adding everything in this list to your own allow list. You can say, I'm going to add anything. And you can group by hash. If you don't want to go through every single file, you can group by hash and say, just show me a list of hashes. Now, nobody's going to do that unless there's only one exception to that. No one's going to do that unless they're in the middle of a ransomware breach, and that's when they're installing their allow listing. So there is an option to do that. You can go through and permit each thing manually. You'll notice a lot of stuff actually, like this is all Windows stuff, so it's probably going to say permit because there's default policies built for that. So at this point, go ahead.
I was going to say, right, we have a bunch of questions just from what we've gone through. Back to, we spoke about developers. What can we do to ease developers not having to request frequently for jar/py files as they're developing an application without using learning mode?
Okay, so the easiest way, and maybe
custom rules, really.
Post, I might come back to that in a second, but post locking down, you're going to be able to go in here, or even pre-locking down, you're going to be able to see these items that say deny. They'll look like this, but they'll be green. It'll say deny, it'll have a checkbox. This is during your learning. But even post, you see something being denied, you can go into here and you can create rules. And here's the goal. You want to create rules that are as secure as possible without being obstructive to the user. Zero trust doesn't mean stop the user doing their job. It means give them everything they need to do their job.
And no more.
And no more. So what I would do, and I don't have a jar file, but let's just, for argument's sake, pretend this is a jar file. I would say I'm going to permit the application, and I'm going to create a custom rule. And I'm going to say, I'm going to permit it for the group of developers. So I'll pick the group of developers. Obviously, I've got a matching app here because I'm not using a jar file. So I'm going to say use a custom. And then I would say something along these lines. So let's just say all of my developers' jar files are in, and it will pre-fill it with the file you deny, but they're in DevTools / projects. I would say, okay, I'm going to permit all jar files in this folder, which makes me nervous, very, very nervous to begin with. But the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say only, this thing doesn't have a created by because it was pre-installed.
And you could put a created by there.
There's an option here for created by, but I don't have, this thing was created prior to the machine, so it does not give me the option. But only if it was created by my development tool. So I'm going to select process pass, and it will pre-fill it for you. So the nice thing about this is it's going to show you what it is. So if you've got a Java dev tool, it will go, this Java tool created the file. So I'd say only if it's created by that is it allowed to run in this folder, which is still bad. It's not ideal because it means someone could open the Java tool, they could write something malicious, and then they're going to...
But it's in some ways it's less bad than your devs not being able to dev.
Yes. And that's the reality. It's about the least amount of privilege possible. And then we just put that in the created by, and then we'd hit add to that rule, and that rule would exist. And you can choose these rules in a customized state. If anyone's got an example, actual, here's a path, here's a process, here's a created by, we can give a really good rule on that.
Should we mention self-approvals in that context?
Last.
Okay.
Let's.
There is another option for developers.
Okay.
Oh,
so
wow, we've a million questions.
The next thing now, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this unified audit, but the reality is at this point, when you first deploy ThreatLocker, you shouldn't even look at this. The first thing you'll see is within about an hour of deploying, you're going to start to see a list of applications in your environment build out under application control, modules application control here, and you'll be able to see every application that you have in your environment. Now, the nice thing about ThreatLocker, so essentially allow lists are just a list of hashes and files. That's ultimately what ends up being. But we do it slightly differently because we'll actually predefine applications for you, and we've already got predefined what we call built-in definitions. So, for example, Google Chrome has hundreds or thousands of DLLs. We've got a definition that knows they're Google Chrome, and we'll say these files belong to Google Chrome. These are all the files in there. So you won't see a list of files. You'll see an application like Google Chrome in there. Now, when you're going through this, you'll see some other stuff. So here, this one doesn't say ThreatLocker. So you see this little ThreatLocker icon next to them. I'm going to zoom this in because I don't know how good everyone's zoom screen is. I'll zoom in as much as I can without losing. So you get a little ThreatLocker icon. This means this is validated by ThreatLocker that it is what it says it is. We're not saying it's good. You'll see TeamViewer, you'll see AnyDesk, you'll see other tools like that, but we are saying it's validated and it is what it says it is. So this one here, we found this program because when we're learning, we also look for things we don't know. So we found this program, if I can find it, called Control 4, Smart House software. Now, when I click on this, because it's not a pre-built-in definition, it's actually going to show me all of the files that got learned in there, and it's going to show you all of the hashes. And you can see here, when you click notes, it will tell you where it found the file and any details about it, who it was signed by, and it will create a bunch of rules in there for you, what we think is best. And there's 1,000 files in here. So, and it'll just literally build that out as it feels best. So at this point, we're learning. We're also going to show you the country that it was developed in if we have data on that. Now, it's worth noting, this is real research. This isn't us going and looking at where it's communicating to, because reality is when Russia got a backdoor into SolarWinds, they didn't communicate with Russia, they communicated with New Jersey.
New Jersey.
So we're going to show you everything we know about it. So we have a team of people here in Orlando, and their job is to look at LinkedIn, scrape photos, and figure out who they were funded by, everything about those customers. So we're going to show you the countries they're developed in, and you can filter by that as well. So for example, if you said, I want to know, say you were working a contract for the DoD, you might say, I need to know all of the code that's developed in Russia. So we can go here, we can see 7-zip, we can click on it, we can see all of the risks associated. It can be used for encrypting files as well as data exfiltration. It was developed in Russia. We'll show you everything we've got about this app, and we'll show you where you have policies for it in your environment, because it's going to build this out automatically for you. The next thing you're going to do is really just sleep for a week or two. That's pretty much it. Or do support tickets, whatever else you got to do.
Cup of tea.
We're going to automatically learn the allow list, and 99.9% of what you need is going to be learned without you even thinking about it. After about a week, we want to do two things. The first thing we want to do is figure out how do we lock this machine down and draw a line in the sand. Quite often we'll see customers get so stressed out with the amount of bad software they have in their environment. They're chasing this battle rather than actually trying to stop it getting worse. And the first thing you do is stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
So we want to stop the bleeding. We want to stop bad software getting into your environment. Before we do that, we want to make sure that no one is going to get mad. And this where it depends on your type of business, what situation you're in. If you are in the middle of a ransomware attack, this is a different approach. We're not going to put it in learning mode. We're going to lock it down. We're going to start approving things and people are going to get mad. But if you're in a ransomware attack, it's better to lock down straight away. If you're a small business that just runs a handful of apps like Chrome and Zoom, you can probably get this stuff done within an hour. And if you're not going to shut down because something doesn't work, you can probably just lock down pretty quickly. But if you're an airport or an airline or a hospital,
To steal a Guns N' Roses album quote, it depends on your appetite for disruption. Come on. Nobody's laughing.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, there was a Guns N' Roses album called Appetite for Destruction. So it said Appetite for Disruption. Anyway, it's okay. It went over all your heads.
So before we do lock down,
Thank you, David. Welcome.
We want to do a simulation.
Yes.
So let's just say we've been deployed for 2 weeks. We're going to say, I'm going to look back at the last week. And I've seen people deploy for 90 days and do simulations every week for 90 days to know exactly what's going to happen. So we're going to say, I want to click in here. I want to know everything that's being denied. And I'm going to check this box that says simulate denies. And what this means is it's going to show me everything in my environment that would have been denied if I'd been secured. And I have nothing, which is good. Very clean environment. But if you didn't have a clean environment, you'd obviously see some other stuff here. And this is where this gets really interesting, because you can go in here and say, okay, this file is being denied because it's a developer and they keep creating new jar files every single day. So I'm going to create that exception with that custom rule. Or this file's being denied because the software is updating every week and it's not one of ThreatLocker's built-in apps. Therefore, we're going to have to create a custom rule. So you might say, Henry Shine's another good example. So there's dental software called Henry Shine. Every time it opens, the hash of the program changes. So you might have to go in and say, well, I'm going to allow this by path if it was created by the Henry Shine updater process. So you can go and build those rules out. Now, what's nice about this is ThreatLocker has millions of endpoints now, and we are doing most of this work for you. So if we see Henry Shine, we're going to say, we know Henry Shine changes every single time. So we're going to create this custom policy in place so you don't even have to think about it. But there might be a couple of things in your environment, especially if you've got strange software that's not used by a lot of people. So we go into here, we do that simulation, and then we just basically click on anything we see being denied. I've got nothing in my environment, but we can just permit it, and we can create those custom rules. And it will bring us up a screen, and we can, obviously this is all part of Windows command prompt, so it's very, very easy. We can put any custom rules in place if it's not known, and we can allow it so it doesn't get denied. And then if we want to, if we have really no appetite for risk, we can come back a week later. Well, that's a balance actually thing. So I feel like by coming back a week later, we're increasing our risk of ransomware. But if we have I'll rephrase that. If we have no appetite for upsetting our users, then we can do that.
Chris actually made a really good point. He said, learning mode made our ThreatLocker rollout last year go very smoothly. For our developers, we secured them last. We created a repository application definition for their scripts and code. It was a matter of working with them to create custom rules, and it was a compromise between letting them work on security.
And that's really it. And bear in mind, software is one of the biggest industries we sell to. So we've got some of the biggest technology companies in the world as customers, and even ourselves. Half of our team is research and development. So we've managed to implement this. It's very, very easy and achievable. Just make sure you go through those steps. Okay, so at this point, we've deployed. We've learned all of the software in our environment, and we want to lock down. Now, there's going to be some things in here you want to remove from the list immediately. So maybe if you didn't know you had 5 different remote access tools running, you want to start dealing with that immediately. So the next thing you want to do is filter by category and start picking some of these high-risk tools. So if we say like remote management software, we can see we've got quick assist here. I suspect that's the deny policy. That is the deny policy, which is good. We've got team viewer. We've got I don't know what that is, Windows cross device. and PS exec. So we can see what's in our environment, and we can delete anything we really don't want right away. So I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to say, I don't know what these are, but I'm going to delete them right away. And TeamViewer is actually a built-in app, which is nice. So I can go in and I can say, let me see who's using this, what devices. It's applied to my workstations, 2 computers, and I'm going to delete this policy as well because I don't particularly care for TeamViewer on my environment. I'm just going to deploy policies in because that keeps it updated. New feature here will actually show you what's pending to deploy as well. So when you do hit that red button, you can see everything that's changed. So one of the things I would recommend, not from a security point of view, but from a success point of view, is pick some fights later on. So typically, a lot of IT professionals, my security side of me says, you're running games on your computer, block, 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 block. You're running Solitaire, block it. You're running Angry Birds, block it. You're running
What
Steam.
have you got against Solitaire?
I don't know. It takes too long. But that's my security side, and also my CEO side. It's like, well, why do they need games? They should be working.
Mm.
However, what typically happens, especially in a larger environment, if you go and block all of the games on day one,
Your approval rating is going to drop.
yes.
Yes.
And I don't mean approval rating as approving new software.
Yeah, well,
I mean
yeah.
approval rating as in someone's going to get mad with you. And then
Yes.
the moment you block something legitimate, someone's going to throw a complete tantrum. And so there is a little bit of a balance here, is when do you take away the other stuff? And my security side says you should go through and take it away as soon as you're locked down, go and remove these. But our first goal should be getting this out and making sure the user experience is as smooth as possible. And then we can go back and start removing things.
So what you're saying really is that allow listing is kind of like marriage. Choose your battles.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Just checking.
She's always right.
Yeah.
Only the user isn't.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to say, for the record, Peter has said, I laughed, Rob. Sorry you couldn't hear it. So the joke did land. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that.
I have 1,000 people. That's not bad, right? So, okay. So now that we're secured, now that we're happy, we've deleted any policies we don't want. The next thing we want to do is actually just go into here and flick our machines into secured mode, which I've already done, but you can select all, hit secure here, which isn't a button because already all secured. And 60 seconds later, everything is secured. So what we've done here is we've built out these allow lists for you automatically without you having to think about much. Now, you also have the ability, and I talked about executables before versus read. And I'm going to put some nuances in this actually now because, so an MSI file technically is not an executable.
Doesn't get executed.
It's a self-extracting zip file. It's a database that puts files in programs. So if you were using allow listing in most cases, it will not block an MSI file from running because it's technically a read and extraction. A Chrome extension is technically not an executable because it's reading a series of JavaScript files that run in the browser. They're technically contained in the browser, and they're not considered executing on your machine. And there are some other examples, but I can't remember.
PS1 files? Batch files? Jar files?
Well, PS1's tricky. Sometimes it's considered an executable. Same with batch files. Sometimes it's considered a read. ThreatLocker will actually override these, and you can technically override more to say, hey, if MSI exec is reading an MSI file, it's an executable. We don't care whether you think it's an executable or not, whether they're saying it's an executable or not. The process of installing a new program, even if the program can't run, once it's installed, we don't really want to get that far down the chain. So we do have these override abilities which are built into ThreatLocker for all of things you'd expect, but you can also add your own if you want to. Chrome extensions is another really important one because most people who are looking at app control aren't blocking Chrome extensions, and this is really, really important. And we do have the ability to actually block your browser extensions, and I'll tell you why it's important. I'm going to filter all the browser extensions in my environment here. I've got a Chromium Coupert, and we've got Google Wallet, we've got Story Lane, Grid Lines, and Grid T. If I click here, I can see where they're developed. And I'm going to pick Coupert at the top of the list.
That's a very red flag.
Yeah, I know, it's Chinese, it's red.
Sorry.
Bad joke. Okay, so we have here, it's a Applications Couper, it's a Windows application, it's a Chrome extension that allows you to automatically find and apply coupons and earn cash back when you're shopping online.
Sign me up.
It's a browser extension and it's considered a shopping tool. So when we filter by either of these categories, it'll find us. it will find it. When running, it has access to the internet, so the browser extension can call out to wherever it wants in the world through the browser. It has access to all of the web data on your page. So if you're logged into your bank account, it can actually read your page. And the reason it can do that is it wants to see if it can find you an offer on that new MacBook Pro that you're trying to buy. And the third thing is it's got access to all of the passwords you enter on any website, which is actually a side effect of giving it access to the web data. So this becomes subjectable. Do I want this on my machine? Now, we're not here to be judge and jury. We're just executioners.
Yes.
This becomes a business decision to you. Do I want to save 20 cents on my Amazon order? In exchange, we're going to give this company made in China access to all of our data.
I suspect that what you will find in most circumstances that most users don't know what Chrome extensions they've got on their machines.
Yes, actually, and most blocks are actually Chrome extensions because people log in with their G Suite from home.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So somebody logs in with their private email address, all of a sudden tries to pull down all the Chrome extensions that they've got on their computer at home, even though they've no business being anywhere near a machine in the office. So I suspect that most users won't even notice if you block any of these. And actually, it would be useful to explain the difference between just removing a policy and changing that from a permit to a deny. Because if you remove it for a policy, the user's going to get a pop-up and they're going to go requesting it. Whereas if you just say block it, they're not even going to see that.
Okay, and that's important. So when we don't have a policy for something, when you talk about default deny, software can't run by default. So it hits what we call a default policy. I'm going to go into the policies in a moment and show you details. But if you have a deny policy, it means software can't run, just the same as the default, but you can tell it to not give the user a pop-up. So if I, for example, go into here, and I'll actually show you this on Potty because it's a little bit easier. I have a policy for Coopert. If I was to delete this policy, if a user tries to run Coopert, they'll get a pop-up saying, hey, you're trying to run Coopert. This isn't permitted in your organization. Do you want to request it? But if I was to go into the policy, and I think I can do it from here actually, but we'll find out. No, I can't. Go into the policy and just say, instead of allow, deny, I can now say save. I can also secure this, which means even if the machine is in monitor only or learning mode, it won't be able to run right from deployment. So this is really good when you want to do things like, I need to block TeamViewer, but my machines are still learning. So I'm going to go and put a deny policy in place right away. But in this case, I'm going to say, oh, something went wrong there. So I almost clicked all applications by mistake. So when I click save, this policy is now being denied. Interesting fact, we actually built that in to stop people accidentally creating a deny everything policy. So if you pick all applications, it has to say it starts with default. So you know exactly what you're doing because it's going to be your default deny policy. But in this case, we'll just click here. Now, if I wanted the user to get a pop-up, I could delete the policy or I could say allow the user to get a pop-up. But I'm going to just hit save there. Now, I want to show you very quickly this policy structure because we made a change here, and this is really important because we want you to have as few policies as possible, but also as little software being allowed on as many computers. So when ThreatLocker first deploys, the default setting in your environment is set at the group level. So I have just a very simple environment, workstation servers, and I have a learning period. Now, on my learning period, the default setting is learn policies at a computer level only. So what that means is we're going to scan 10,000 machines, and if we see Angry Birds is on Bob's machine, we're going to create a policy for Angry Birds on Bob's machine. If we see Office is on, well, Office is normally pre-created in advance, but let's say Solitaire's on Judy's machine, we're going to create a policy for Solitaire on Judy's machine. Bob won't be able to run, after learning, Bob won't be able to run Solitaire and Judy won't be able to run Angry Birds. So we're keeping it relatively limited here. You can switch this to something called group level policies, and then there's also system policies. Now, what group level policies does is it says, if we find something on Bob's machine, it's going to create a policy for the whole group and allow Judy to run it and anyone else. Here's why this is bad. On a small environment, it's not so bad. But on a large environment, there's two problems with this. One is you could end up with 15,000 policies, which, while ThreatLockers are incredibly quick, could impact the performance because we're now having to check 15,000 policies, even though the average user's got 200 apps on their machine. So we're going to create excessive policies, meaning excessive work for ThreatLocker. The other reason it's bad is if Bob has remote access tools, Judy can now run those remote access tools. So you're opening this up really wide. So what we typically recommend is this learns policies at a computer level. And what that means is when you go into modules here in application control and go to policies, it's going to go and say, hey, Blue Jeans, this has been learned. I mean, this is obviously, I've done this as a test, but it was learned for one computer. And you'll be able to see all of your policies here. Now, depending on when you deploy ThreatLocker, depends on whether you have the ability to run the order of your policies run. So if you deployed ThreatLocker 2 years ago, the way the policies run, you can create policies for the entire org. So I'll pick one for the entire org here. So I said Blue Jeans is allowed for the entire org. And I can say all users and groups, so I can use Active Directory as your users and groups here as well. Also, worth noting, if you have something like Okta or a third-party system, we can pull API calls and synchronize those groups as well. So worth noting that. We can have which application. So in this case, it says just applies to Blue Jeans. We can say what application's allowed to call it. This is just a brand new feature we launched, which is really cool, especially for PowerShell, and I'll go into that. We can say the interface. This is really, really very rarely used. There's some medical practice for it with DVDs and images on DVDs. And we can say whether it's permitted, ring-fenced, which we'll go into in more detail on another webinar, or denied. And what ring-fence does just at a high level, it says you can run it, but maybe it can't access our files or talk to the internet. Very, very important. Or denied. So this is running here. Now, this policy has a policy order. So in my case, it's -6, which is a bit odd. But it means it's essentially the first policy that runs in my environment. If you are deploying ThreatLocker today, the policies run in whatever order number it says. So if you've got a policy with 1 at the entire organization, and you've got 2 at the group level, and -1 at the computer level policy will run before the org policy. Because you might have a policy saying Bob's allowed to run Blue Jeans, but somebody else isn't. So this is very much like old school firewall, if you think about it like that. And at the very end, we have what we call a default policy. So I've got one in various groups here, but technically I could put this at my org level. So I've got a developers group and say my default policy is to deny. And this is all set up by default, so you don't really have to go and change this. It's deny, but let the user request. And this is where it says all applications are denied. So if it doesn't hit a policy before that, it will hit others. Now, if you deploy ThreatLocker 2 years ago or a year ago, your policies are going to run in the order of organization, then computer, then group. If you want to change that, you can change it in here. There's, I guess I haven't upgraded mine because I thought I'd had for some reason, but you have this option to upgrade policy structure. So when you do that, you can click upgrade. This is one way. It's basically going to change it to say my policies. Oh, it has already been upgraded. I guess the button's just there. So I thought I had. So
That's useful for showing people.
Yeah, it's useful. So you can say upgrade policy order, and this will basically change your policy order to say now they're going to run in whatever order number you say.
And just to confirm, as part of that process, we will redo what they've already got to put the denies at the bottom and
yes,
etc.
So when you
effectively going to mirror what they've already got.
Yeah. So when you order it, it's not just going to say suddenly they're going to run in the order that's specified. It's going to basically reorder everything.
Yeah.
So if your org policies are going to be at the top of the list, because if we don't, suddenly your behavior will change. Another useful setting here, we have an agent setting that you can add. This is something that requested where we have these built-in apps. So prioritize built-in apps. You can actually set this. By default, it is prioritized. If you create this, it will say built-in apps are no longer prioritized. So if you have a custom version of something above a built-in, that would take priority. And I know that was very heavily demanded. So we have all these policies. They're very, very granular. And the reality is most people never need to change them. But if you want to, you can come in here and you can change these policies to any order you want. Okay, stop for questions for a few seconds.
Well, relevant to that, and I think you've probably answered it, would it be best to have one policy set up for an entire organization rather than computer group level?
So the answer is yes, as long as, and when you go into your applications here, this is one of the things, when you onboard with ThreatLocker, you're going to get an engineer assigned to your account. So they're going to work with you every week and they're going to give you recommendations. Week 1, we're going to do this. Week 2, we're going to do this. Week 3, we're going to do this. They'll sit on the call with you for an hour or a week until it's gone. And if you're large organizations, I think we've got some 50, 100,000 endpoint organizations that do calls every week still, just to do a health check and everything. But one of the things you can do here is you can actually sort by how many computers and how many policies there are, and then you can promote them. So if I've got 7-zip here, now I've obviously done a lot of testing and messing around here. So I've got 7-zip allowed at the org level. I've got denied at the workstations and denied here. I could delete these. I can promote, or I could promote them. So I could say I want this to promote to the entire org. And when it does that, it actually wipes out all of the other policies that would be affected by that.
Now, this is actually relevant to the policy reorder as well. We use Ninja One, which uses PowerShell for third-party updates, and I've just had to add 7-zip and GitHub to the PowerShell ring-fence whitelist. Is this the right, safest approach to enable Ninja One patching with ThreatLocker?
Okay.
But again, this is relevant to the policy reorder, because if you've got 50 or 100 suborgs, you'd have 50 or 100 PowerShell ring fencing policies, whereas with this,
yeah, so it is correct practice, and that goes to the ring fencing part of this, which I'll get into a little bit. When you allow something, so the first question is, if something can't run, it can't cause you any damage. The second thing is, if something can run, what should it be able to do once it's running? So can PowerShell go out to the internet? Can it see your files? And the answer should be no. You should limit what it can do. So if you're talking about, hey, I use PowerShell to download my updates with Ninja One, very, very simple. Just edit your policy to allow it to go out to 7-zip, go out to other applications. And that is a really useful feature. If you create one policy that's global, you can also have this concept of a global group. So if you've got lots of suborgs, you can apply it to a global group.
This was the whole problem problem with global groups before, was global meant global. Global meant everything. Now you can have something at that level, but you can also have exceptions on top of it. And so you can have a, control PowerShell everywhere except on Danny's machine, where it can do A, B, and C.
What you do here essentially is, if you have this global group, you can create one. This will apply to every machine in suborgs. But if I applied the policy to that, so if I went in and said, actually, in my application control, I'm going to go into 7-zip, and I'm going to say this can run globally for all my suborgs. This would be, but if you wanted to block it for suddenly one person, or maybe in this case, actually, I've denied 7-zip. So I'm going to edit this one and say, run this globally. This now runs globally. I'm setting it to deny. I could now go in and say, and actually, this is smart enough to know that the order of this policy is never going to be reached, because this one's above it. So it knows this policy will always supersede this one, which is fine, because we're saying this org's allowed to run it, but the other orgs aren't able to run it.
Just to mention, there is also, and somebody asked about this, is there a KB article that explains this, the policy reordering? So if you just search on the KB for policy order changes, you will find it.
And we'll just put this, so policy order changes.
Boom.
It's this one here, and this gives you a lot more detail if you're using that. So you have the ability to do that. The other thing is, you can also create, and we're going to do another webinar just for ring fencing, but you can create tags for ring fencing. So if you want to add something to a tag, it'll then apply to multiple policies, which is a nice way of doing that. So here, what we've got essentially, we've got these applications. We've allowed them to run. It's learned what we've got. We can modify these policies as we want. We can see everything that's running. And if we're not sure if something's getting blocked, we can very quickly go in here and say, show me any denies. And it will just tell us what's being denied in the environment. I can see I've got some storage here, no executions. The next thing I want to show you is what happens to a user. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you want to add software to your environment. So I'm going to go and try and add putty to my environment. Nice, sensible tool to add to your environment.
Absolutely.
And the user's going to get an experience that looks like this. Worth noting, you guys can brand this. You can put your logo on there. We had one customer who put his face on there. I thought it was a little bit weird, but no judgment. The user can hit request. You can change this text if you want to write something else as well, but the user can hit request, and it's going to show the user information about the application. So it will tell you they can protect you. Users trying to run putty, it's networking software. If executed, it could have access to the following data. This is useful. It's a little bit of a scare tactic when a user tries to request a game, because it says, or a coupon clipper that says it can have access to my passwords, and then it says made in China. It actually disarms a lot of users, and they'll decide, actually, I don't want this coupon clipper.
Do I really want to run this coupon clipper made in China?
It used to be 85%, but now it's well into the 90s, where the number of users, once presented with this information, will actually abandon their request and not even ask the IT person for it, because they just don't want it. So I can hit send request. New feature we're adding here is custom fields. So if you want to put that into your own ticketing system, that would be useful. I can attach a copy of the file as well. So if I hit request here, I can now approve this request. Now, it's worth noting this can go into your ticketing system. It can go into ServiceNow. It can go into PSAs, different examples like this. ThreatLocker will see the request here. The user's requested access to PuTTY. We'll see it signed. We'll see details. We can check virus total. We can download the file. We can insight so we can see how many other people are running this across the ThreatLocker community. This takes a little while sometimes to load. We can also go and run it in a testing environment. But most important, ThreatLocker knows what this is. We know it's part of PuTTY. So we're going to say, hey, we're going to permit this. It's part of this application. We can see the same information. We can see where it's made, the category, and we can say I want to permit this for just this computer or the entire org. Again, different webinar, but you can ring fence it. ThreatLocker can give you suggestions. So we can say, I actually don't want PuTTY going out to the internet or seeing my files. And we can say, I want to elevate the application so it can run as an admin, but we'll go into a different webinar on that. And then to approve it, you can just hit approve. It takes seconds. Send the user a message back. And the user will get a pop-up within about 60 seconds saying, your software has been approved to run. While I'm waiting for that pop-up, what this actually did in the background, your admin experience is I'm looking to allow PuTTY. We can see here that a policy was created for PuTTY in our environment. And if I go into downloads, I didn't see a pop-up, but maybe I can now run PuTTY. It's very, very quick for the user experience.
This bit was actually really important. So I spoke to somebody last week who had experience in implementing other inferior allow listing products in the past, and the bit that they were most interested in was what does this look like when something gets blocked? How do I get it to run? What's the process involved? And it is literally just block, request, evaluate, approve, run, all within 60 seconds. If you're using some of those inferior tools, you might be waiting for group policies to get pushed out and all that kind of rubbish. So it's a really quick, really smooth approval process from being blocked to being requested. On the subject of which, Daniel has said, we've noticed that a chunk of users don't even read anything on that screen and automatically hit request access.
So one of the things you can do is actually make them write something in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually require information in the box, and it helps a little bit to why do you want this software.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. I want to show you one other quick thing here, which is sometimes we don't know what the software is. So PuTTY, ThreatLocker knows what it is. We know what the dependencies are. We're going to track all future updates and know what future update of PuTTY will be blocked again. You don't have to think about this. I just got this request for Google Update. ThreatLocker says we don't know what this is. So I can see the complete file details. It's not signed by Google. So I check virus total. I'd say, is this bad? Why is ThreatLocker blocking a Google Update? 2 of the AVs say it's bad, but pretty much they say everything's bad. Everything else, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, Kaspersky, Sentinel-1, Trend Micro, all say it's good. So a little bit feeling confident, but I'm a skeptic. So ThreatLocker saying, we don't know what this is. You should run this in our testing environment before you run it. Noteworthy, we wrote this software 2 years ago. It's a sample piece of ransomware. It will encrypt your files. It will then drop EICAR in your startup folder just to cause some alarms to go off. ThreatLocker is saying you should run this in the testing environment. So when I click on this, it literally is going to open the testing environment, copy the file to it, and allow me to run that file in the testing environment. So here, I can now click Run Now. And when I click Run Now, we see a couple of things pop up really quickly. Obviously not a Google update because Google didn't pop up. And we can see that it started changing. We got bait files on here with credit card numbers. It can see that we've hit EICAR. Test virus is now configured to run, obviously looking like a bad file. We can also see all new files put on our machine, and this is very, very useful. If this was good, this is obviously bad. We could just end and capture, and it's going to get all of the dependencies in one go. And again, by hash where we can. And if it's bad, we just say, nope, I don't want to keep this, discard. We discard it, close the window, and I'm going to reject that request. So
no ransomware for you.
Not allowed.
Oh, interesting one from Brandon. With the permission changes for the order operations for built-in versus custom policies, does this mean we can block a specific process within an application that's built in? For example, blocking Adobe's cloud features as a custom policy while providing access to everything else it needs.
Absolutely. So what you do to do this, the first thing you note is you need to go into the agent setting, prioritize built-ins. If it's not there, you can click Add New, and you just say, don't check the box. So, and that means built-ins would not be prioritized. You could then create a policy to block that one executable and block it. You can also do a ring fencing policy to block Adobe going out to the cloud if you want it to not go out to the cloud.
Somebody said, Dave said, we had a fun one yesterday where Windows core files policy dropped below default deny in our servers group. Cue 10 minutes of panic.
Oh, that's actually, this is interesting to say that.
Well,
Obviously,
it actually all just, somebody did also ask the question as to why we have a deploy policies button. And it's really annoying. I think that's probably a really good example of why we have a deploy policies button, because it gives you room to
review what you're deploying.
Yes.
However, I that's not really the truth of it. So the reason we have a deploy policies button is because whenever you permit something, by the way, it immediately deploys to that user.
Yes,
so
that
you don't
machine.
have to hit the deploy policies button. The reason we have a deploy policies button is because let's just say you are 100,000 endpoint credit card company, and you have probably a few requests coming in hourly at that point when you've got 100,000 endpoints, and you're saying approve Solitaire for this guy, approve Angry Birds for this guy, whatever you're approving. If you said, hey, I want to approve this for the entire org, because I'm just approving everything for the entire org, which some people do, I'm not a big fan of it, and then you hit deploy, and then it deployed that to the entire org, it means the entire org is downloading their new policies. And then 5 minutes later, somebody else approves something else, the entire org's downloading it. The deploy policies allows you to stage that and not do so many deploys to the whole org. So you don't need to press it when you're permitting something for a single user. It will always deploy to that customer. But this will allow you to do deployments to the entire org when you want, as opposed to all at one go. But it also gives you that ability to do that. One of the things that you got to be, and I'll give a caveat on the reorder. So if anyone's reordering their policies, a couple of the small risks that might happen, we are now changing the way we order policies. We're ordering them at the API level and not at a database level. The orders may come out different to they did before. Now, if something was at the same order before, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 was always going to go ahead if they were in the same group. But if you had 5 things at 1, it was going to always pick. It might change the order now. So if you had permit PowerShell and deny PowerShell at 1, suddenly it might change the action.
My favorite term, GUID-betical.
Yeah, GUID-betical. Because if you know anything, SQL orders by GUID, or unique identifier as it's called in SQL, and C# orders by GUID in a different order. But it's just, these are the kind of risks that you'll have. One thing I'd recommend though is keeping as few policies as possible. Where you do, if you have all of your computers, if you have 500 computers and you have 500 computers, just upgrade the policy to the org at that point, because everyone's using it. So you must have one policy to manage, one policy to change. What other questions do we have, Rob?
Travis is asking, as a follow-up from previous question, I have a desire for minimum word requirement or banned words, so I stopped getting I need this for work on the requests. Well, I mean, you can customize, and that is something we should mention, you can customize the pop-ups, so you can actually give people instructions as to what they should and shouldn't. So if somebody just requests everything without thinking, stop requesting everything without thinking. Do you actually need this thing? Is it causing a problem, etc.?
So and there's a whole bunch of new options, by the way, in here, and on the tray configuration. So show request access on blocking, so you can actually hide the request access button. You may be able to do it in there. I'm not sure. There's so many new things come out here. If you want to drive yourself insane, this is like this new section we built for all the advanced configurations that most people don't use, but might be useful.
Some awesome stuff
like
in there.
Changing someone to another store. Now, we have one other feature I'd like to talk about, which is the ThreatLocker store.
The one thing we haven't mentioned in this so far is the testing environment.
We did. We just went through it.
Okay, never mind. Sorry, Avi was asking a question about the testing environment, which is what happens when running an app that doesn't install and has supporting files? How do I send all of them up to a testing environment? And somebody else has asked something. How do I get something to the testing environment without running it?
Okay, so you can go. Okay, so I'll answer 2 of those questions very quickly. In the unified audit, you can go to a file. You can hit search. So let's just say I'm going to look for my executions. Oh, so you're saying if you haven't ever ran it? I think that's what they're actually saying. So
well, without running it.
Yeah. So there's 2 things. One is, I'll answer without requesting, because that one comes up quite a lot. Where is execute? So here I'm going to go for my execution. So without running it, I'm going to get to in a second. So without permitting it, you can go in here and you can actually upload the file here. And then when you hit permit, you'll be able to run it in the testing environment. So that's step one. Without running it, you'd have to open the testing environment from a different program because it's designed to be a response. You technically could go into here. You could say, I'm going to run something in the testing environment. And once it's running in the testing environment, so I'll just say do not use, it hasn't uploaded the file yet. In that case, I could then go and say, just open anything and then go into the browser, download the file, and you can run it. Because you have a browser on the testing environment, so it's a full machine. The other question was, so you had the test. How do you get something in the testing environment?
How do you get something to the testing environment without actually running it?
Okay, so somebody also asked about, so that was that one. Someone also asked about, what about something that needs dependencies and upgrades? So the testing environment is going to cover 99% of your approvals. However, sometimes somebody's going to request something that requires an
Supporting
install
files.
and we have a built-in for Exchange, but let's just say they're updating an Exchange server or an SAP server or something like that. One of the things you can do there is when you permit something, and you can do it from here or you can do it ahead of time, you can put it in installation mode. So obviously, poor example, but let's say this said Exchange update or SAP server update because Exchange is built in. So I would now say this is an update for SAP, which I don't have, but I'll create a new app called SAP instead. And I would say instead of permitting this file, I want to use something called installation mode. So when I use installation mode, I can start it upon file execution. This is a new feature, well, new within a year.
Mm-hmm.
This is pretty cool because this basically means when the installation mode will start as soon as the user hits the file. So if they've walked away from the computer and come back and they've requested setup.exe, as soon as they hit it, it's going to start installation mode. What this will do, if I just do it immediately, I hit approve. And I'm just going to say yes because it's saying I've already actioned it. Submit approval. What that's going to do is it's going to send a message to the user. It's going to give a pop-up. Oh, I just got logged out. Oh, wrong. How many portals do I have open here?
Too many.
And it's going to pop up here saying your administrator has started installation mode. You can now install your software. Now, what's cool about this is you can run your installation. It's going to track all of the new files created, and it's going to permit them automatically going forward. And that's a really nice feature because you don't have to think about the 200 DLLs. And then when I hit end, it's captured everything for me. The other nice thing about this is a new feature that we put in place is if someone downloads a different file from the internet, it won't be able to run because we're limiting where you can run those programs from. Because it's temporarily disabling protection, but it's still enforcing protection on, I think, PowerShell and Explorer and command prompts, just to make a user's life a little bit more difficult if they decide to download a game after you've turned this off.
Running random things, yes.
Which is a really cool feature for that. What else do we have? I know we're out of time, but let's get through the most important ones.
I think we could do 2 more webinars, the amount of questions we have. So there is there's a bunch of them. Thank you for adding MS Store into the testing environment. Amazing addition. Avi, the question was about when no install is happening. I have an executable and 12 DLLs I need to run in the test environment.
Okay, so you can. So it's hard to run.
Yeah, it's
the install
tricky with an executable and 12 DLLs.
I mean, you could upload each DLL manually and then bring it in there. It's hard to run a DLL in the testing environment.
No.
You could copy them on there. If you have the executable and the 12 DLLs, you could just go into the testing environment, download them to it, and run it. It's just a Windows server, so you can do whatever you need to do in it. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah, we could literally run 2 other webinars with the amount of questions that have come through.
I think what we're going to do is actually set up a Q&A webinar just on this because I think there's a lot of questions. I will say one of the most important things about this is that the power in this is unbelievable. The overhead should not be difficult. People often say, is this going to be hours and hours of my time? It's only hours of your time if you don't use it correctly. And I can give one example where people spend hours and hours with Allowlisting, and that is they deploy ThreatLocker, they lock everything down, all of the tech team doesn't know about it. Someone's trying to push a new piece of software out through their GPO, which, by the way, when you do Allowlisting properly, should be blocking the GPO installs as well. That's where ransomware mostly gets deployed from. It's not deploying the software. They're getting mad. They call the vendor. They're on the phone to the vendor. Why isn't your software script working? Why isn't this installing? They're only going to find out to go into ThreatLocker and it's being blocked. First thing you know, the only way you're going to waste time is if you go into ThreatLocker and You don't check it's blocked if something's not working. The other thing is, if you're doing something like that, you can have a testing machine. You can put that machine in learning mode. You can deploy to that machine, and you can learn for all of the machines from there as well. So that's another option as well, where you literally just go in to the computer's page, select learning mode, you select the application you're learning, and push the application out to that machine, and then it will learn, and you can say, permit this for the entire organization after the fact. You will have a solution engineer with ThreatLocker, so make sure you please ask these questions to them too. They will walk you through that.
Sandy has very correctly pointed out, you mentioned you'd cover self-approval for devs example towards the end. Can we still get to that?
Okay, I'm going to log back in here quickly.
I want to understand how frustrating that actually is for devs.
Okay, so self-approval, it's a feature that we don't particularly like.
No.
I'll tell you where it's good.
It would be fair to say we struggled with it.
So most cybersecurity issues stem from a user somewhere. However, some of the most critical cybersecurity attacks come from someone gaining access at a system level, deploying software out through your software deployment tool, Active Directory. If a user individually runs a piece of ransomware, the damage is more recoverable than if it runs at every single system in the company. So one of the things you can do is you can give the users, or certainly some users, the ability to self-approve applications. Now, remember I said this is policy-based. So I'm going to pick the developers group. Here's all my policies for the developers group. I could create obviously custom, but if I go to my default policy, I have a option here to say, show notifications to the user, allow the user to temporarily self-approve. So you can go into here and say, I want to allow the user to temporarily approve up to 30 days, up to 1 hour, whatever you want. So you can say they can approve their own software for 24 hours. I want to apply ring fencing to it. So if they do have something new, I'm going to stop it accessing our network shares. I'm going to stop it maybe accessing PowerShell and command prompt just in case it is bad. So you can put some restrictions around it. We're going to have a webinar on ring fencing. But this is very useful because you can say, okay, anything new you can run, but it can't see our network. It can't see PowerShell. It can't see Redshift. And the user will get a pop-up and it will say, I wonder if I can, well, it's probably going to be too long. Let's see if I can get it done on my default workstations very quickly. I know we're well over and someone's getting mad, but I'll quickly go into my default and I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to change it to allow.
Just while you're doing that, I will mention that most of these questions, although very good, are answered in the KB. So the likes of the policy reordering, there's a really good article in the KB. This self-approval, again, it's all covered in the KB. So if we didn't get around to answering your questions here in the Q&A, the question is probably answered in the KB.
Okay, so now I've just allowed self-approval. So you see here, it says to protect you from cybersecurity, mmap's not allowed. I can say self-approve. It asks me to put in the thingy code. So I can type. You know, someone was complaining this was too hard to read. That seems too easy.
Yeah, it's gone the other way.
So I can now say verify. Oh, apparently not. Probably off the screen. That's what
I can see it from here. EMVXP.
No, the other one was 3 letters. It looked really, really easy. I think someone was saying.
Very on lowercase g.
Okay, I will give them the win because apparently I can't read this myself. I don't know if that's a lowercase.
Lowercase EMV.
You think the
uppercase X, uppercase P. Boom.
Capture failed.
Oh.
Okay, someone was right because that is incredibly hard to.
Okay, that's tricky.
We're going to have that fixed so it's a better capture.
But just follow up on them. So does the self-approval also submit or allow the devs to request permanent approval for the thing they are temp unblocking?
Yeah, so I think what it does, and if I could get it working, I think, and I say this with relatively confidence, is it shows as self-approved under here. So you will be able to go into here and approve or deny or do whatever you'd like. So you'll be able to see everything that everyone self-approved.
So that answers the other question, which was when a user self-approves, do we receive a notification like when a user requests something through the ThreatLocker pop-up? It goes there.
It goes there, correct.
Yeah, David, does this prove Danny is a robot? Absolutely. Sheep.
We will be back in 2 weeks, I'm guessing?
30th, I believe, yes.
30th of October for our next webinar. We look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you for attending, and thank you, Rob.
Thank you.